episode is brought to you by our partnership with Honoring Our Animals. Losing a beloved pet is unlike any other grief. It's deep, it's raw, and too often it's misunderstood. But you don't have to navigate it alone. Beth Bigler, founder of Honoring Our Animals, is a pet loss grief counselor dedicated to helping you navigate the complex emotions of grief, guilt, anger, bewilderment, and deep sorrow. She'll help you practice self-compassion, care for yourself with gentleness, and deepen your ongoing bond with your beloved. I have been a participant in 2 of Beth's small group cohorts, and let me tell you that it has changed my life. I have been carrying the grief and shame that comes with the loss of an unexpected death for over 14 years. Beth's small group programs and her infinite amount of wisdom has not only helped me reconnect with my beloveds, it has helped me invigorate my current relationships with Toby and Fitz. I will be forever grateful to Beth and her community for helping me get through something I thought that I would have to carry for the rest of my life. Beth teaches you that the love and relationship you have with your soulmate pet doesn't ever have to end. It continues forever. And Beth will be there to walk you through it side by side. Visit Honoring Our Animals or find her on Instagram at Honoring Our Animals to learn more. Because your grief is profound, your love is forever, and you are never alone. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, the podcast where pet parents, pet guardians, and pet professionals come together to dive into real issues in dog parenting. From controversial training methods to sensitive health topics, we're getting raw and real about what it means to care for our canine companions. Join us every Wednesday for unfiltered conversations, expert insights, and personal stories that will make you laugh, cry, and grow as a pet parent. No topic is off limits and no question goes unanswered. You won't get one perspective here. You'll get them all because every dog is different and every human is too. You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. I'm Em, and we're back again with an amazing guest this week. We have Beth Bigler returning from Honoring Our Animals. How are you doing today, Beth?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for normalizing and validating pet loss grief.
I think that it is a topic that we don't talk about enough. I think that it is something that we don't think about because a lot of us are trying to be in the moment, enjoying what we have with our pets. And then all of a sudden things happen, they get older, there's an emergency, and now you're faced with these thoughts and hard choices, and you have to think about things that you didn't think about before. And losing Cajun really defined that for me because I was so not prepared for him to go. And now I really struggle with Toby, and I'm starting to struggle with Fitz because they get older every year and they're not puppies anymore. And they're both considered senior dogs now. And that's hard. As a pet community, it's something we should be able to talk about instead of just swipe it under the mental health rug of everything else mental health and give it its own airtime because it deserves its own airtime.
That's right. My amazing pet loss grief counselor, who's the whole reason I kind of got into this work in the first place, says your goodbye begins the moment you bring your beloved home. And that is so uncomfortable. But if we have that acknowledgement, even though we don't want to think about it, people who call me all the time for pet loss grief counseling, they say, I never thought that this day would come. I never even imagined it. And I think that's true for a lot of people. But also, there's a lot of folks who are like, I've been dreading this day for a long time, and I've been in this anticipatory period. So one of the first things to normalize is to say, hey, we know that our earthside time with our beloveds will end, and we are ready to acknowledge that that's coming. And most importantly, what can we do to support it? Because there's no way around it.
There is no way around it. And I think that almost makes it harder for me, especially now that I've gotten to this point where I feel like I've gotten both my dogs in this healthy groove, and Toby almost feels like he's aging backwards, and Fitz doesn't feel like he's aging at all. It's kind of like he's in this standstill. And so now I have these 2 dogs that are approximately 6 years apart in age. And all I can think about is, oh no, what happens if now they both die at the same time? And that has been so difficult for me. And that has been a touch point for me to reach out into the community and you and talk about and work through that. So for somebody who doesn't know what anticipatory loss is, let's give it a definition and your number one recommendation where to get started.
I might have just given it. Acknowledge that this is happening. Listen, when we talk about anticipatory grief, what we're really talking about is this huge constellation of feelings, emotions that go on within us about the notion or the idea that our beloved is going to transition. And of course, for some people, that's because age is showing itself and our beloved is changing, and we can see that. And there may be some medical conditions that are increasing. For other people, this begins when we get that gut punch diagnosis, which is so common as well. But when we talk about anticipatory grief, we're talking about all the things that go with that. Anticipatory grief impacts us in so many ways: physically, cognitively, socially, financially, spiritually, logistically, and of course, emotionally. People who are experiencing anticipatory grief have thoughts like, I don't want to live without my beloved. I don't know how life will go on if they're not here. Will I ever be happy again? I want to fight for my beloved's care. I want to do everything I can. When I give my beloved medical treatments, I feel like she hates me. Sometimes in anticipatory grief, we feel like, I want it to be over. I need some relief. People experience that as well. Sometimes we get the feeling, why can't I save him? I'm not good enough. Some people have the feeling, all the gifts and guidance and lessons and teachings that my beloved have brought me are going to evaporate when they're gone, and no one's ever going to love me like that again. And when we are experiencing all these feelings of uncertainty and fear and powerlessness and anger and dread, many times we kind of become a shadow of ourselves. And not to mention, for many people, the anxiety around potentially making a euthanasia decision, which everyone experiences that differently, but many people feel like, I'm going to kill my best friend. And of course, that would not be my take on compassionate euthanasia, but there is an emotional dread that many guardians feel about, how can I ever even begin to make that decision? So when we're talking about anticipatory grief, we're talking about all those things and actually way more. I could keep going, but that's the gist of it. Did I miss anything from your experience?
I don't think so. For me, it's definitely the aging. Every year they get older. That's when it hits me the most. We'll just mention that today, as we're recording, this is actually Fitz's 7th birthday. And so this topic is actually hitting pretty hard today because 7 is getting pretty up there for a large breed dog. He's about 62 pounds. So average span of life for him is somewhere between 10 and 12 years, probably. Hopefully he lives much longer than that, but you don't know. You just have to go based on what the science says, what the history says, what all of the veterinary information from current studies and all that says. And right now that's 10 to 12 years. And I think that it's especially hard for me as Fitz ages because I lost Cajun when he was 9. He was very young. Even for an older dog, he was very young. And I was unprepared. And now I have Toby, who's 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, and 7-year-old Fitz, and they're both in that senior gap. And sometimes I think about it and it's just hard to breathe because I don't know what I would do if I lost them both at the same time. And that is where I really, really struggle. Losing them individually would be easier for me because I would have the other one to rely on. I think that because I have participated in your group for so long now, I think it's been a year, actually. I feel better prepared for losing either or both of them, but I still get those moments where I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to go through that again because it is hard. I don't know if it's better or if it's worse to not know because I've lost 3 dogs already, but each loss is different and it hits differently. So I don't know if it's easier or harder because that absence of your pet in your life, it changes the whole dynamic of your life. And that's where a lot of the things that you recommend come in so handy because I don't have to feel like I'm not including them in my life. I've done so many more things with Toby and Fit and because of Toby and Fitz that I didn't do for other dogs. I always wear this necklace and it has charms on it. It's been the same charms for several years now. One of them specifically has been on there for about 8 years. And this year for Christmas, I bought myself 2 new charms. One's a Toby charm and one's a Fitz charm. They're little circles. I also had custom Fitz necklace made and I took everything off the necklace and I only put the charms of Toby and Fitz on this necklace. So it gave me a new start with 2025. And that's something that I'll be able to carry with me forever, even after they're gone. And those are the kinds of things that you teach.
Well, specifically on the anticipatory side, when I'm working with people, and most of my anticipatory work I do in a one-to-one setting because it's very personal and it's very customized. But I think for everybody, the number one thing that I recommend that all guardians think about is that this anticipatory period is kind of like a braid, right? There's 3 strands to it that are very powerful to be supporting all at once. And I like to work this way with people and think about the braid. And I also like to give this idea to anticipatory grievers so that you can always say, okay, which strand of the braid needs most attention today? Which strand of the braid have I been maybe avoiding? And so that central strand is centering your beloved. This is their end of life experience, regardless of how many months or years we have left. This is theirs. And so what we want to do for them is really continue to create a sense of normalcy, a sense of calm, avoiding chaos, really thinking about this time as so sacred for them. And thinking about, wow, I get to walk this road with my beloved. And of course, you and I both know, not everybody gets that opportunity. So it's very powerful to center your beloved. This is an opportunity for you to step up. This is an opportunity for you to strengthen your relationship with them, to talk with them openly about what's going on and what they're experiencing and what you're wondering about. And to really feel like, hey, I am personally struggling as a human about this, but you also are seeing this differently. We got to remember about small animal brain that it's very present. It's very right here, right now. There is no companion animal out there right now who is having an existential crisis about how many days they have left. That's what we do. That's not what they do. And one of the reasons we love them the most is how present they're able to be all the time. So we got to meet them with that presence. And is that hard? Absolutely. But giving them that centering is the central strand of the braid. And of course, there's a lot of techniques we use to help support that. And then the other strand of the braid, of course, are these logistical, practical things that come up when we are in anticipatory grief. And that looks a little different for everybody. But for a lot of people, this involves complex medical decision making. Sometimes it involves what kind of treatments might I want to do or not want to do? Am I giving my beloved agency and dignity within the treatments that I am choosing for them? And on that kind of logistical medical decision making side, thinking about things like, all right, what is my definition of quality of life for my beloved? What are my deal breakers for their end of life experience? What are the risks that I'm willing to take in terms of their end of life? Because that comes up a lot. Our risk tolerance plays a huge role in how our beloved's end of life goes. In many ways, these sort of logistical and practical aspects of anticipatory grief need a lot of their own attention. And a lot of those things we can do while our beloveds are still very well, which is helpful. When I work with people, I want to make a lot of the practical decisions as far in advance as possible, especially things like if you decide you want to do in-home euthanasia, what is that going to look like? What elements do we want there? Do we know what the schedule can be for when people can come? Do we know when that's outside of their hours, right? Really knowing a lot more about ideally what we want if we get to choose can be super helpful. So there's always the logistical and practical strand as well. And then of course, that third part of the braid is about taking care of you. How are we supporting your fear, your hypervigilance, your difficulty being present, and your anger? How are we helping you release those feelings? How are we supporting you through this with an immense amount of self-compassion? And most importantly, not depleting you completely, because many guardians in an anticipatory period, especially if there's any medical care going on, get completely run down, completely isolated. And so by the time that their beloved transitions, unfortunately, they are absolutely just spent. And it makes that post-loss period so much harder. So you, the guardian, that third strand of the braid is you and taking care of you. And that is so important. So in terms of the number one tip, the number one thing to think about, I think, is really start thinking about this anticipatory period as a braid and how can I show up for each parts of this braid and make sure all of those strands are strong.
That's really beautiful. Wow. I'm actually speechless just listening to that whole thing there. And it really does make you think about all of the things that you do have to put together for that. And it's kind of the same If it was a person in your life, obviously we can't go around euthanizing people because that's not allowed, but we do have to prepare for our death. I know there are many people who want to prepare their funeral or have a funeral before they pass so that they can experience the funeral themselves. You can do things like that for your pet too, especially if you're getting close to the end and you want to give people the opportunity to say goodbye, family, friends, loved ones, people that are especially close to your pets. And I think that another part about it is just the guilt, right? There's so much guilt tied into it, whether that's financially because you can't afford a certain treatment that could potentially extend their lives, or maybe you opted out of the treatment because you were worried about how it was going to make them feel, and now you feel guilty because you didn't do the treatment. Or maybe you start reflecting on their life in general, and then you're feeling guilty because of all the things that maybe you don't think that you provided them. But again, like you said, that is us. That is the human part of our brains going back and reflecting on those things. Dogs, they don't remember that stuff. They always think that you're the best person always ever. Cats maybe have a little bit more opinions than dogs do when it comes to things. But I also don't think that cats hold a grudge either. I just don't think that that is part of how the animal brain works. The emotional side of the human brain is much more complex than the animal brain. And those assigned emotions that we give are just that, they're assigned. And that's another thing that you really help with, is you help people identify, is that me or is that actually Fitz or Toby? And watching that happen in small groups or even just in the community chats has been eye-opening, because people have those light bulb moments where they go, oh, that isn't. And that's been really, really neat to watch.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of centering your beloved, because when we are projecting human emotions, human ideas, human crisis, human tragedy narrative onto our beloveds, it's not helpful for anyone. It's not helpful for you. It's not helpful for them. When we are first encountering our anticipatory grief, whether it's through aging or especially if we have like a sudden kind of diagnosis, it's like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. I felt that way about my soulmate, Arnie, and so many people I work with feel that way. And we feel like something horrible is happening to us. And it can be hard to shift that and lift that so that we can show up. It's very human and okay that we project things, but we do also have to remember about small animal brain. My understanding, now I am a pet loss grief counselor. I am not an animal expert, but my current understanding is that for dogs and cats, other small animals, it's like toddler brain. Maybe you know more. And my understanding is like, yes, fear, joy, excitement, probably sadness in certain immediate contexts, but not anything more complex than 2 or 3 year old human. So in other words, things like shame or jealousy or even pride. Now, I don't know about pride. I've seen Arnie be so proud of things sometimes, but again, that's probably me, not him, right? So that is powerful to be reminded that they are not experiencing, either in terms of how they experience time or emotion, most of the things that we're actually putting on them. And a really loving thing we can do for everybody involved is to just stop putting that on their experience. Now, that's our experience and we want a place to go with that. That's why people need support in this, but we just don't want to put it on them because it's probably not accurate.
No, you're right. It is toddler brain. And think about like complex emotions. You said guilt, shame, pride. I don't know, because I kind of like, I've seen Fitz prance around the yard with the ball in his mouth. He's pretty dang proud of himself in that moment, but not as a overall theme, like proud of his life or proud of his accomplishments in training. Their emotions are very short term. Like you said, in the moment, in the present moment, they are joyful, happy, disappointed, hungry, upset, antsy, whatever it is. But dogs don't have, or cats have, the ability to plot out your demise. They don't have the capacity in their brain to have scorn or hate. I would say a dog can have a reservation, or a cat can have a reservation about someone because they can smell that person has a reservation about them. The hesitancy thing I can see, but the really deep ones, the really deep-seated emotions, again, back to guilt and shame, jealousy, scorn, hate, even hierarchy as just a definitional word. Dogs don't understand that. Cats don't understand that. They know that they belong to this family and that's their world, but they don't understand that there's millions of other families out there that other dogs belong to and other cats belong to, and that they're just a speck in the earth. This is their world and they're just happy to be in it.
Completely. And listen, you brought up guilt on the guardian side too. And because you've worked with me, guilt is often the number one thing really that people come to me for, aside from wanting to continue their connection and strengthen their relationship after their beloved transitions. And 99% of people I've worked with do have some sort of guilt, shame, or regret about their beloved's life or their beloved's end of life experience. It's something very important to support. And when I work with people on the anticipatory side of things, I do my level best, if we have the time, to clear all of that, release all of that, shift all of that before this transition happens. It's very doable to do. And frankly, when you can do it when your beloved is earthside, it's so much better because they're right here. You can talk to them about it. You can share, you can express, you can make an amends if you need to. It's really a terrific thing to do before that transition moment, because then you are not carrying that into your post-loss grief. Of course, we feel guilty. We always want to stop the bad thing from happening, and we always wish we could help them live forever. And we so internalize often that we can't do that. And even if it is beyond our power, beyond our capacity, and our role as guardian to do that, we oftentimes take that on and think, I could have saved my beloved. I could have done more. And that's a very difficult thing. And as you know, being around my community and working with me, it's a huge thing that people struggle with. And I always say, it doesn't matter if it's, quote, rational or, quote, irrational guilt. If it's there, if you're feeling it, it's important. We want to address it. We want to dial it down and help it shift for you.
That's exactly why I came to you, was because I had been carrying around guilt for 3 dogs, 3 terrible fast deaths. One was 1 year apart, and then the other one was not even a year and a half or 2 years later. They were all very close. I hadn't really dealt with any of them. Going through the small group cohort with you and the people that were in the cohort, it was life-changing. Being able to let go of some of that stuff that I had been carrying around, even unconsciously, has made it so much easier for me to move forward and see the benefit of being able to make those amends and make sure that I am living in the moment. There's a conversation I recall having with you about Toby and how I felt guilty about going on walks with Fitz and doing these training opportunities with Fitz and having to leave Toby behind. And you said to me, well, what is Toby doing when you leave? And I said, he's sleeping. And you said, so he doesn't care that you're gone then, right? I was like, oh, so that's a perfect example of us putting the guilt on ourselves and feeling bad for something that our dogs don't even care about. Toby didn't care. He got a snack and he was taking a nap and his brother wasn't bothering him for an hour. And I was worried because I thought he felt unincluded. Toby wasn't worried. He didn't care. He was like, peace. That was a wonderful moment of revelation for me that you gave me. And that was such a gift.
Well, I remember that conversation, and it's just as funny today as it was then. And truly, if I had a dime for every time I had a client say something to me like that, it is so interesting. I even have clients who say, I feel so bad. I went to dinner, especially in the anticipatory phase, because one of the things that happens, especially if you're doing a lot of medical caregiving, or sometimes if we have a beloved with dementia or something where we don't want to leave them alone, if we even go out to dinner for an hour, we might feel guilty. And a lot of my clients have cameras. And so I'm always like, well, have you ever checked on the camera, what your beloved is doing while you're at dinner? Sleeping on the couch with her stuffy. Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure she's all right while you're at dinner. Of course, every circumstance is different, but we put all of that really intense self-criticism, which so many people struggle with. And we never feel like we're doing it well enough, never feel like we're good enough, which is so interesting because isn't one of the reasons we love our beloveds that they make us feel like we are the best? We are the greatest things ever. No matter what we do, I'm still going to show up with a happy tail and a smile and a glint in my eye because I love you to pieces. That's one of their assets. They look at us and remind us, hey, we're not so bad. We got this. And yet in this whole end of life experience in particular and in our grief after, we tend to be so mean. We are so mean to ourselves in ways our beloveds would never be mean to us. And that's a really hard thing for most grieving guardians.
You said this earlier. That's the line for me. My hard line is if they are suffering, if they are in pain, if their quality of life is they can't get up and move around. You have to help them in and out to the bathroom. They can't play or interact with you without complete and total utter discomfort. I don't want them to live like that. I don't want them to feel that pain and that dysfunctionality, because that's a complete change of routine and senses. I don't know if it was me and I was confined to this bed 24 hours a day and I couldn't move or talk or eat or do anything on my own without somebody manipulating me or putting a food tube in me or whatever. That just don't think that is a fair existence. And for me, that is where the line is. So Toby, as he's getting older, he's got a heart palpitation that's getting worse and worse. It gets slowly inching its way into a grade 4. He's been coughing a lot, and that means he's going to have to be on medication and stuff. But if it gets to the point where I feel like he's suffering all of the time, I don't want to put him through that either, because I don't feel that that is kind. Like you said, they love us no matter what. They don't judge us. It's the purest form of non-judgment. And they're not going to judge us for keeping them alive. But I think that it would be so much better to have good memories, happy memories, than those awful memories of palliative care just to get through. Because at that point, who are you holding on for? Are you holding on for them, or are you holding on for you? And I think being faced with those questions are the ones that are really, really hard to talk about.
Those are so hard to talk about and so resonant with most people who come to me to talk about anticipatory grief. And we really need more safe spaces like this one where we can ask those questions and talk about those questions and talk about what are our lines. You have thought this through. That's very powerful. And to also acknowledge that sometimes it's murky. I've worked with so many people where not every condition and not every part of aging is clear cut. Sometimes you can have an animal who has tremendous cognitive decline, but physically they're perfect. And that's very murky for people. Sometimes you can have a beloved who has physically really slowed down, but they're still very interactive. They're still very social. They still have things they can enjoy. You see all the time all over the internet, there's all these different sayings, better 2 weeks early than a day too late, which intimidates a lot of guardians. You see, well, if there's 5 things your beloved loves and they can only do 2 of them, then you know, all kinds of these little quips and quotes. And I think there's a place for those and those can be helpful. But so many situations I've worked with anyway have a lot of texture and nuance to them. And there's no blanket approach. There's no one size fits all. And again, your risk tolerance for catastrophe is a huge part of this. And that varies person to person. So if there's something cardiac going on, very often we know, depending on what it is, that could mean there's going to be a sudden event. And for some guardians, they don't want to even imagine walking in on that. They don't want that to be their last memory. They don't want that for their beloved. They don't want a risk of any pain. So they might say with a certain type of diagnosis for something cardiac that they want to euthanize immediately. And then other guardians will say, I don't care. It's not going to come to that. I will be happy to take the risk and see how long we can go. And both of those are valid decisions. Euthanasia decisions are hopefully made with veterinarians. It's a medical decision. Hopefully you have a veterinarian you can really relate to and ask tough questions to and get support from. And hopefully you are making a compassionate decision that obviously doesn't allow suffering. I do say that to everybody I work with. We don't allow suffering here. However, most of the people coming to me aren't looking for any kind of suffering. They aren't trying to do that. They're trying to make peace within themselves that, number one, that they may have to make that decision, and how can I support myself in the difficulty of making that decision? Many people that work with me say it's the hardest decision they've ever made in their life.
I definitely agree with that. One of the earlier episodes that we had, I think it was like number 11, was with my friend Ness. And she talks about how her dog was going to cross the Rainbow Bridge and she had scheduled the appointment and she had to wait a week because the guy had had surgery and he had to recover for a few days before he could come over and do the euthanasia in her home. And she said that she had just felt like she had scheduled his execution and she felt so guilty about it for the entire week. And I can totally see it from that viewpoint, but I can also totally see it as I've made this decision. Now I have these next 4 days to really invest and make them the best 4 days as possible. But like you said, it's an individual approach. So many times I have said over the last year, 2 years, the dog in front of you, the dog in front of you, the dog in front of you, the cat in front of you, the person in front of you. Every single individual sentient being, spirit, soul is entirely unique and different from any other one on this planet. And I think that people want this cardboard, black and white, here you go system of how things work, but we can't do that because then it's not fair to the individual, because then we're definitely not meeting the needs for the person or the pet because we've tried to put it in a neat little box and we've left all these things outside of the box that now we have to deal with. And I think that that is probably where a lot of people get lost, is because they are trying so hard to just be like, it should be this way, but it can't be.
And they are desperate to do it at the, quote, perfect time. I'm using air quotes here, people. The perfect time. And one of the things I say all the time on Instagram, and I say it to my clients, is let's release the idea that you're going to pick the perfect magical moment for euthanasia that's going to make you feel amazing about it. At the end of the day, regardless of if we felt we did it too early, or maybe we went a little too long, or maybe we got it just in time, whatever that means, I don't know anybody that feels like a rock star about the euthanasia experience. It's so hard to go through, and we all have such high expectations for ourselves of getting everything right for our beloveds the way they've always gotten everything right for us. And sometimes just releasing that pressure valve, you need to pick the, quote, perfect time, can be helpful. We got to let that go and say, we are going to do our level best to make a strong, educated, supportive, compassionate decision. But I am human, and I may not know what I don't know, and I do not have a crystal ball. And that is a very tough thing to accept and a very tough thing to acknowledge. But if we can acknowledge and really lean into the idea that it may not be perfect, but I'm going to try my very hardest with the information I have at the time it's presented to me. That's all I can really do.
Yeah, personally, as a vet tech, just from the things that I've seen over the years, and probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of pets that I was witness to for euthanasias at the clinic, I think that's a decision that you need to make beforehand that I don't think a lot of people talk about, is whether or not you can be there in the room with your pet. Very, very, very rarely did I see people leave their pets and not stay. But I think that, like you said, in that following of compassion, kindness, think about that from your pet's perspective. They're at their end of life. They don't know what's about to happen to them. And then you basically abandon them if you leave them. So I think that you need to prepare yourself for, are you able to leave them and let them pass on their own? Or are you going to feel guilty for that after? Because that's another kind of aspect about it. And if you are not able to be there, my personal recommendation would to be there while they give them the medication that helps them ease into the sleep, so that they don't have to see you walking away from them at that last moment. Because I have heard people say, that's my biggest regret, is walking away. My biggest regret was not being there. And sometimes that's out of your control too. My parents, a few months ago, one of their dogs died. And it was pretty traumatic because I had gone over there like I do every day to let them out for lunch walk on my way home from work. And Lily and Ernie both went outside. They both went potty. They both ran back into their kennels. They got their treat. And about 2.5 hours later, when my mom came home, Lily had passed. Completely unexpected. She was 13, 14 years old. She had a collapsed trachea issue and had some breathing, respiratory issues. And they didn't do anything to see cause of death. But I'm sure that her trachea collapsed, or her heart finally just gave out from that whole situation. And my mom said that it was one of the worst things that she had ever experienced, because she came home, their dogs are in the kennel together, and one of them was dead. And she felt so bad for Ernie because he'd been in there for 2.5 hours with her body. I asked my mom, has there ever been a time when you've had one of the dogs just pass like that? And she said, no. We have always taken them and gone to the vet and done it that way. We've never had this happen before. And then there's other people who feel that would just be easier because then they don't have to make the decision. The dog exited on their own. So again, that's that personal, where is the line? I think that you have to really be able to have an open mind and look at it from so many different perspectives, because it isn't something that we always have control over and we can't always plan for. And sometimes, even if we are planning for it and you schedule the euthanasia and the doctor's supposed to come in 4 days, but then the next morning, your pet's not there anymore. It really is a very intricate, delicate situation.
I want to validate anybody that didn't stay. There are a lot of reasons why people don't attend euthanasia. And you're right. Most people that come to me, if they made that choice, they have a lot of guilt. But my number one priority for any beloved, any animal, is that their death be non-chaotic, non-catastrophe, non-drama. I really want every animal to have a lot of peace in that moment and comfort. And there are occasions, and I have worked with people where a guardian's presence would add more chaos, more catastrophe, more drama to the situation for the beloved. And if that's a possibility, I want that beloved to be attended. So sometimes I work with people who can attend, who can be there for your beloved. And again, how long can you stay? How long can you be there? But listen, I've worked with people where I don't think it was in the beloved's best interest and they didn't want to be there. And the last thing I want for beloved is someone who doesn't want to be in the room, who's going to create a disturbance or scream or cry or yell or cause a problem for the beloved. So I think it's very delicate. And I always advocate for people to be with their beloveds if they can, but if they cannot, there are reasons why that might be a good choice. A lot of people come to me and say, there's no way I could ever be there. That's their starting point. I can't do it. And by the time we've worked together, we've talked it through. I talk people through every step of what a euthanasia experience is going to be like. And I prepare them for a variety of different circumstances that might come up, which is another thing we don't talk about enough, is that things can go differently than a euthanasia than you might be expecting, or a veterinarian might not tell you some of the things that might happen that can really startle you. So I love really walking people through almost like a dress rehearsal visualization, so they really have a sense of, okay, here's what I want to do. I even talk to people about, think about where you want to be standing. Do you want to be looking into their eyes? Do you want to be holding them? Really making a lot of these choices. That eliminates for a lot of people fear and uncertainty. And once people kind of know what to expect and get a little more comfortable, I have my plan of how I want to do this. And here's some of the elements I'm going to bring in that are meaningful to me. For many people that I work with, the idea of being there becomes less daunting. I think it's very frightening for people who have never experienced a euthanasia, don't know what it's going to be like, and are perhaps imagining or catastrophizing scenarios that aren't even how it goes. So I think it's really powerful. And I would also say to anybody who's feeling nervous about this to really talk to your veterinarian, or if you're going to be using an in-home euthanasia service, about exactly what it will be like. Ask them to talk you through. Ask them for advice and recommendations. They've attended many of these. They might have some things that can make it more supportive for you. And if you're out there feeling like there's no way I could possibly do it, sometimes even having a trusted friend, maybe someone who's experienced euthanasia, that you could talk it through, give you some ideas, kind of mentally walk you through what it might be like for you and things you can do that will be supportive. I think a lot of people could be there, but it's so scary and unknown. It just feels like this chasm that many people just would rather walk out. It makes sense.
Trust me, I completely agree with you. Like I said, that's my personal recommendation, is be there if you can be there. I know what it's like as a vet tech when somebody probably shouldn't have stayed and they do scream or cry or they're getting angry. There was one time, it was really awful, honestly, where a couple got into a fight in the middle of the euthanasia when the dog was passing. They were screaming and yelling at each other. That's certainly not how I would want to exit the world. How could you ever want that for your pet? But again, things happen, and then that's why you're so needed, right? Because people have all of those feelings afterwards and they have no idea, where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I find a community that supports this? And I think that is just such a beautiful gift that you can give people, because I would have never even imagined that somebody like you had a program and a community that supported people who need it in such, like you said, a chaotic, very foggy period of time in their lives. Because I think you're right. A lot of people don't know what's involved in a euthanasia. I was very fortunate to work for veterinarians who, depending on the client preference, it would either be the vet tech or the veterinarian would come in and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what we are going to do. These are the things that might happen because of what we're doing. This is about how long it will take between this injection and things like that. We're going to place a towel because of this and that and the other thing. And we would always walk all of our clients through that. We would bring in tissue boxes. We would bring in, all of the things. I worked for very considerate doctors. And I think that that's a huge, huge help for some people, because death for people is scary in general. And now you have this little creature that you love so, 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 so much, and you have to help them experience that big, scary thing called death. And it's just really, really, really hard.
Yeah, another area where I wish everyone could do some thinking about in advance, no matter how old your beloved is about your beloved's body and their aftercare and what your preferences are for that. Because so many people don't think ahead of what might feel most supportive for them. And they feel very rushed in that decision making. They feel pressured and they feel like they don't know all their options or what's possible. That's another area on the anticipatory side that I like to help people really think through. For some people, they of course want to do a burial somewhere. Okay, where's that going to be? How are we going to do that? Some people feel very strongly about cremation. Some people want to do aquamation. Also preservation, by the way. Preservation is an option. And within each of the choices, there are lots of questions to be answered that you don't want to spend time thinking about, right after your beloved's euthanasia. There's a lot of choices like, do you want to take your beloved's body yourself to wherever they're going to be cremated or aquamated, which a lot of people don't know they can do. That's just one example. Another example, a lot of people don't know that it's okay to bring your beloved's body home and not put it in a freezer for a time. There's just a lot of education around this and also things that you can be thinking about, making decisions about. When I'm working with people on the anticipatory side, my dream is that by the time we get to that moment, whenever it is, that everyone feels that all my decisions have been made that could have been made. I have a plan. I know what to do. And that's how I view preparation. There are things that come up that are unexpected. There are circumstances that are unexpected. And I don't believe that anyone can fully, quote, prepare for this. There's too much to it. But there are a lot of things that we can do. And I'll tell you, one of the number one things we're looking for in anticipatory grief is control, because we feel so out of control. We feel so helpless. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know how bad it's going to get. We don't know what it's going to look like. The things that we don't know are endless. And that makes us so afraid and so powerless. So I love taking charge where we can control to make some plans, to make some decisions, and do what we can. Another area of control that I love, and you touched on this earlier, is how can we celebrate our beloved while they're here? Do we want to have a going away party? That sounds unconventional to some. If it makes sense for where they are, think about having a going away party. A lot of my clients with older animals, they do a bark mitzvah at 13 or a quinceañera at 15 or however you want to do it, sweet 16, to celebrate our beloveds getting older. I love bringing community together who care about you, who care about your beloved, to say, hey, we're here to celebrate you. I love doing end of life photo shoots with our beloveds. That's such a powerful thing to take some professional photos. I love doing bucket lists if it's right for your beloved. I always like to say about any of this, there's a lot of situations where none of those things are appropriate, and that's okay too. There's a lot of low-key activities. I've made several posts just about very low-key anticipatory grief activities you can do if your beloved isn't up for doing other things. A bucket list doesn't have to look like 10 hikes in the mountains, It can be very simple, small things too. But really thinking about how can we commemorate this time of life, this very sacred and tender time? How can we bring community together to celebrate our beloveds? And really, we're bringing our beloveds community and we are bringing ourselves community, because hopefully that's part of the community that we can lean on after their transition.
I mentioned the necklace earlier, but we did do a photo shoot this year too. And let's see, what else have I done? I've had mini photos, mini paintings of each dog's done. And then the after words, I have Cajun and Fiona's ashes. I don't have Izzy's ashes, but I have Cajun and Fiona's, and I will get Toby's and Fitz's. And eventually what I would like then is to have this collection of all of my dog's ashes be mixed in with my ashes. And then I always say dumped in the ocean, but I think that's illegal now. So I don't know if that'll actually happen, but maybe we'll plant them in a tree or something. I don't know. But I would like, when I exit the world, I would like to exit with my dogs. And I think that wherever I go, then their ashes need to go in the same place. And that's something that I thought long and hard about. And some people think that it's weird, and I'm okay with that. I don't care. That doesn't matter. It's not for them. It's for me.
Absolutely. There's a lot of comfort in knowing what that next part of your beloved's body is going to be, what it's going to be like, how it's going to be. And a lot of my clients love to pick out urns. If they know that their beloved is going to be cremated or aquamated, they find tremendous comfort in even having the urn in their house while their beloved is still here, right? So it really is deeply personal. And the thing is, naturally, we don't want to think about a lot of these things, right? We don't want to imagine this day is coming. And so having some time and space to yourself to sit down and think. And I always say to people, start off, if you're new to this idea, start off just doing some free writing about what you would want if it were you. What would you want if it was your body, your end of life experience? How would you want it to feel? How would you want people to speak to you? What would be important to you? What would you like done with your body? How far would you want things to go medically? What would be your quality of life standards? Sometimes it's a very powerful exploration that, again, most of us haven't done. Just take a temperature check on our own beliefs and our own values about end of life in general. And then you can start asking those same questions about your beloved. Many of my clients find it easier to start thinking about their beloveds once they've kind of done it about themselves. So that's an easy, gentle way in if you're feeling nervous about approaching.
I think that's a really excellent point of view. Honestly, that's what did it for me as I started thinking about what I wanted for me. I had gotten Cajun and Fiona's ashes because I wanted them. I had to have my dad pick up Cajun's ashes because I couldn't force myself to go back out to the veterinary office where he had passed because I wasn't ready. That was the hardest one. It was my first dog. It was so awful, but I knew that I wanted to be able to keep him with me. And so I got his ashes. It was the same thing with Fiona. And it did really take a lot of reflection. Why did I do that? And then thinking about, oh, well, if it was me and this is how I would want it. I have commemorative tattoos of my dogs on my arms, carrying them with me all of the time. So of course I want to carry them with me when I pass. And I think that for everybody that is going to look different. And I think, again, that that's okay. You have to look at it from that individual, unique kind of perspective. And you're so good at doing that and so good at helping people see from different perspectives too. And I think that's what I like the most about your community, especially doing the small group, because I had never done small group therapy before. And honestly, I was so nervous about it. And I did one and then I did another one and I'm active in the community. And it's so strange because you bond with these people who have had the same experience, but not the same experience. And you get to hear these stories about other people's dogs or other people's cats and everything that they went through and the decisions that they've made. And you get to see them start at the beginning of the however many weeks the program is, and then at the end of it, and you still talk to some of them afterwards. And it's just a really unique experience. I think that it is such a great topic to do group therapy with because you're getting to talk with people who understand what you are talking about. Because even though your grief is different than everyone else's grief and your feelings for your pet are different than everyone else's feelings for their pets, the whole concept of it is the same. And you are speaking the same language, even if it's in different shades of that language. So I think it's really cool how you have put people together in groups and help them see themselves in a different light just because of what someone else's experience is.
Absolutely. And part of speaking the same language is that I don't work with anybody that I don't want to work with. By that, I mean, I screen everybody very carefully who comes to me and make sure they're a good fit with me and my approach and how I see things, because I only want people in my one-on-ones, in my small groups, in my larger community, my client community, who are up for what I'm offering, which is we're going to work on tools. We're going to find a lot of different ways to support whatever you're experiencing. I got tools that are very nuts and bolts kind of approach. I got some stuff that's more out of the box and woo-woo and weird. That's okay too. We never know what's really going to support grief. So we try a lot of everything. I want people who are open to trying. I want people who do their homework. I assign tons of homework. And that's for a reason. I want people who are going to really invest in themselves and do the work and do the things outside of sessions that are going to help you really make progress. And what ends up happening is in the community, everybody there is speaking our language, our honoring our animals language. And they've all made tremendous strides in their grief. They're all working daily on how to be more connected to their beloved and keep that relationship continuing. And it's an amazing place to be in community. And it's an amazing place to be leading because it's inspiring every day. Can I come after you about something about your future tripping though? Because before we go, I just got to come after this. What if they both die at the same time thing?
Yeah, please do. Expose me in front of all of the listeners.
No, I say come after you with love because I just want to I know you know this, Em, but I want to remind you and I want to remind anybody listening about this future tripping thing. First of all, right here, right now. That's one of my favorite phrases. Right here, right now. Toby and Fitz are here. Right here, right now. Toby and Fitz are great. Right here, right now. I am safe. They are safe. You know, whenever you get into that fear of what's happening next, you know, the acronym for fear, future events already realized. You just don't know. You really don't know. Zelda was only a year and a half older than Arnie. And in my mind, I always thought she'd die first. She only had one kidney. Her other one was totally shriveled. She had been a street cat on the mean streets of Pasadena, California. I thought for sure. And I never would have guessed that she would have outlived Arnie by 5 years. Didn't make any sense to me. We don't know when our beloveds are going to transition, but there's no guarantee it's going to be in short succession either. So when that comes in for you, just to remind you, maybe ask yourself, that's one possibility. What's another possibility? Remember, we want to always be thinking about all the other possibilities. But more importantly, it's not very supportive. It's not very supportive for you to walk around saying, they're both going to die at the same time and I'm going to be all alone. You know how it is. When we notice an unsupportive thought coming in, maybe use a tool to move away from that unsupportive thought. And I give out those tools all the time. And one tool to move away from that is just that question of what can I immediately do to have a better day with both of them? What's the first thing I can do right now to have a good day with Fitz or a good day with Toby, right? And also getting back to gratitude, that thought comes in, you're both going to die and I'm going to be all alone. Just lean over and shout and be like, Fitz, you're such a good boy with that new toy. What are you doing, sweetheart? And thank you for being here. Thank you, universe, for another day with Toby, right? Really leaning hard into that gratitude, not in a toxic positivity way, but in a like, hey, you're here, I'm here. We're loving life today. We don't know what could happen to any of us. We don't know. And it's okay if that anxious thought comes in. You say, all right, I hear you. I hear that you're nervous. This could come true, but my odds are pretty good it may not. So I'm going to just release this because right here, right now, everything's okay. What can you do to really empower yourself? What can you do to give them normalcy, happiness, and peace? Because let me tell you, if you do that, and I know you're going to do that, even if they died at the exact same time, you would know, hey, every day I showed up with love and excitement and gratitude and that their lives were incredible. And if that happened to you at the same time, we'd work with it, we'd move with it, we'd get you through. And in the meantime, don't keep reinforcing that narrative. We just don't know. Look, I have the same problem because for the first time ever, I adopted two. I still call them the kittens. They're like almost 3 now. I call them the kittens, but I adopted 2 siblings from the same litter. My 2 orange boys. I have that nervousness too. Are they gonna die at the same time because they're related? Are they gonna die of the same thing? Am I gonna be caregiving for both of them at once? I go through all that. I'm only human, and I have to stay out of that zone big time because I know I don't have control over that. That's above my pay grade. So all I can do is just enjoy every second, be grateful for every second, acknowledge, yeah, someday this is going to come. But right now, what's in my control is having great moments with them, fun moments with them, giving them the most amazing lives so that I can reflect on their lives, that their life was full of joy and happiness and fun and normalcy. And they weren't worried about my freak out over, are they going to go at the same time? That'll be the worst. I'm right there with you. And let's just keep rating that back in. Come into right here, right now, and remind yourself that's only one possibility.
Yeah. And like you said before, the right here, right now, your pets live in the right here, right now. So stay here in the right here, right now with them in the moment and enjoy it for what it is, because eventually you aren't going to have it anymore. So you better enjoy it while you can.
Amen.
All right. Well, we are going to wrap up, but before we do, why don't you, I always tell, the guests to leave the listeners with something. And I know that you have something big to leave the listeners with. So I am going to let you do that before we sign off.
It is pretty big, pretty amazing. Thanks so much. I have a book that is being published on April 22nd by Quarto Publisher. I'm so excited. The book is called Honoring Our Animals, 365 Meditations for Healing After Pet Loss. It's a daily meditation book. So in other words, you can have me every single day of the year, a little cheerleader in your corner, giving you some empowerment, helping you find ways to feel connected to your beloved, helping you with tools for guilt, for anger, for jealousy, for comparison, for milestones, whatever's coming up. We got lots of practical tools and strategies. And of course, lots of reminders about taking care of yourself. Each day we have a short little meditation about whatever the topic is that I want to talk about. And then we have an invitation, which is like an action step that you can put something into action immediately to start reinforcing this throughout your day. So I've put a lot of love and energy into it and cannot wait. So that is available now on Amazon for pre-order. You can put in Honoring Our Animals, or you can put in my name, Beth Bigler, and find it there. So I'd love to have all of you go check that out, put that in your cart. It's going to be an amazing gift for anybody you know who's experiencing a loss. It's very digestible, very approachable. It's also a beautiful gift for yourself. In the back, there's an index where you can look at different topics and say, ooh, am I having a hard time with one of these type of topics today? And you can go right to all the entries that talk about that. I appreciate all of you for supporting the book. And of course, please continue to follow me on Instagram at Honoring Our Animals. I have twice daily original content about pet loss grief. I have a monthly memorial service where you can honor your beloveds. I also have a weekly newsletter you can sign up for where you can just get kind of a dose of inspiration once a week about both anticipatory and post-loss grief. And of course, if anybody's looking for deeper support, you can reach out to me through my website or through my Instagram about working together one-on-one or in a small cohort group like Emma's mentioning, and come on into my community of incredible grieving guardians. I would love to get to know you better. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, you guys, we will have Beth come back because we are trying to normalize this topic of pet loss and grief and the goings through it as we all do. And we thank you for listening to this episode of Straight Up Dog Talk, and we will see you guys next. Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited and produced under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk, LLC, and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe and be sure you don't miss an episode. And leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerry Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.